Let me ask you a question, everybody. Do you have a right number two? That is a big, powerful question. Tanisha right now is getting us all set for Facebook. We have this on YouTube. We have it on LinkedIn. We have it on X. This is a big topic, Alex. So talk to me, my friend. Why is there so much drama, pain, angst around hiring the right number two?
Yeah, so a lot of times entrepreneurs don't believe they need a number two.
Ooh, I can do it all myself.
Yeah, and they think if I just work harder, work longer, maybe hire other people, but maybe not take that leap and hire that number two leader. And so it's oftentimes the last position they look to hire for, and they make some mistakes along the way. So it's important to hire the right number two leader, and sky's the limit.
Well, listen, I hear that maybe some people even think, well, you know what? I'm going to save money and I'm going to, that's an expense. The right number two is an expense. And what I've learned is that the right number two is actually maybe the best cost savings thing you can do. Let's talk about that. You and I are part of Strategic Coach. Dan Sullivan, our coach, talks about unique ability, but do you think that's part of the secret is that, look, if you don't have the right number two, you're going to be taking away from your unique ability?
Yeah. So to address the cost issue, right? A players are free. And so,
that's a tweet right there.
Yeah.
Players are free. What does that mean? Because I
actually think it's more than that, right? So like if you find the right number two, they're going to pay for their salary, at least 2 times, probably 10 times what you pay them in return. And so, after doing a couple hundred of these, no one's ever called me back and said, Alec, my profit is lower because of the expense of hiring that number two. Everybody has realized tremendous gains. And so you have the cost side of it, but then you have the benefit of being in your unique ability. So if the visionary or entrepreneur is in their unique ability, they can gain, they can provide the company a lot more impact, right? So they can do a lot more to build the company value, creating new services, new relationships, new ideas, new clients. So it's Gino Wickman, he calls it rocket fuel when a company hires that. And so it's truly rocket fuel when you hire that right number two leader.
That's so good. Well, we got to go way back to the beginning, my friend, and we won't spend a ton of time on this because I want to talk about your future, not your past. But let's go back to 2012. 2012, I was starting to coach around the deeper path, which is, people's opus. It's their main thing in life. And you were in a group with me and you started talking about this idea for number twos and vision and VisionSpark. And let's just take it from that little idea in that room that we had to now you are blowing up. Like what happened to get that VisionSpark is now known by a lot of people? You're doing hundreds of the right two leaders. Give us the quick story of the last 12 years.
Yeah. So you were instrumental in that. I mean, you said, Alec, where is your passion? Where is your heart? Who's your audience, right? And it was truly the entrepreneur. It was truly their obstacles, and helping them overcome obstacles. And so, back 20 years ago, I had a mailing and printing company and noticed that we weren't hiring very well. And I reached out to a mentor and said, what am I doing wrong? And they said, are you using any sort of science or data in the hiring process? And I said, no. And so we started using an assessment tool, and instead of 3 out of 10 people staying with us, we had 7 out of 10 people staying with us.
Wow.
And so we started using science in our hiring process. 2008, I sold that business, started helping companies improve their cash flow. Noticed companies had not just cash flow issues, they had people issues which were literally causing them to handcuff their cash because they had the wrong people in the wrong position. So In 2012, I started VisionSpark with a passion to help entrepreneurs overcome that obstacle of hiring the wrong people. Along the journey, I learned about EOS.
Yes.
Grateful for my friend Alex Freitag, who's on my Vistage group. He knew I wanted to help companies that valued culture and really had strong core values. And so we started marketing our services companies running in the US, and also through Alex's encouragement, really tried to focusing on that number two leader. So it was right around 2014, 2015 that we were focusing on that integrator position, COOs, GMs, and have done over 200 of them with a 95% placement rate, or success rate, I should say, 95% success rate, 99% placement rate. So
99% placement and 95%. Say that again. What was the 95%?
So when recruiters and search firms talk about success rate, you got to ask them about two numbers. One is, what's their placement rate? What are the odds that you're going to find me that person? The average is 60%. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize that. I thought everyone found somebody. We always find our clients someone. So we're at 99% placement rate. And then the retention rate is how long will they stay, or what's the success of them staying a year or longer. And so we're well beyond that 95% success rate, where, industry average is somewhere between 40 and 70%.
Oh my gosh. I think it was you. I'll never forget. I really feel like it was you. In 2012, you shared this such a powerful data point that I've never forgotten it, but it was from the book Top Grading. And you said something like a mishire at the C-suite level is a 15x cost. Remember when you shared that?
Yeah.
Tell us what that means.
Yeah. So Brad Smart did a study on what is the cost of a mishire, and in the study at the time, this was in the 80s or 90s, the average C-suite income was $105,000 a year, and he equated the mishire cost to $1.5 million. And so most people are shocked at that, but they're even more shocked when I tell them a mishire wastes approximately 278 hours of time. So, time is something you're not going to get back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in a business, you might say, do you want to waste 278 hours, or do you want to lose $1.5 million? And like, some people are like, man, I can never get back my life. And so it's a huge thing. Not to mention culture, the culture, pain of a mishire. I mean, it could really jack up people's confidence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In you as the leader, in the company, like and Dan Sullivan, our coach, says that the entrepreneur needs to protect their confidence. The number one thing.
Number one thing.
So I look at your book, Alec, and I'm just blown away because, first of all, our team loved working with you, but you look at this. I mean, how cool is it to have a foreword by your hero, Dan Sullivan, who's the number one entrepreneur coach in the world? I mean, how crazy is that?
I was blown away. I was super grateful that he offered to write the foreword in my book. And the whole who, not how concept, right? I mean, Dan's a big believer in who, not how, and he believes in the power of having a number two leader. And he even says, his line is, he's loves his wife, but he says, no Babs, no coach, right? And so, strategic coach would not be where it is today without his wonderful wife, who has helped him transform the company and 10x the company.
Babs is awesome.
Yep.
I just gave her a big hug yesterday or the day before, and she is amazing. But you're right. And I love how Dan knows his space. He says, look, I'm front stage, meaning everything in the workshop room and everything behind the wall is Babs. And think about that. Alec, coach teaches the self-managing, self-multiplying, but you really can't have that type of company unless you have the right number two.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the question we get in Strategic Coach is how many key hires are you away from having a self-multiplying company?
Ooh, that's deep. See, folks, have you ever had somebody just walk around and capture your tweets, man? Those are good.
Yeah. I
Those
heard
are
that.
good, man.
I heard that from Chad Johnson, and Chad
So
heard it
good.
from Dan. So,
Tanisha, let's tag Babs, let's tag Dan, let's tag Chad Johnson. Let's
yeah.
also tag Shannon Waller because I saw Shannon's picture, and
Mhm.
Shannon and you have done webinars on this topic. You've done training on this, so she gets it. What's your relationship with Shannon?
Yeah, Shannon's awesome. She's a friend. She wrote a nice endorsement in my book.
Yeah,
We've done several Who Not How webinars with her and my good friend Emily Morgan of Delegate Solutions.
yeah,
And so we've had maybe half dozen or so Who Not How webinars. Dan Sullivan was a guest on our last one, but talking about that concept of Who Not How, if we can really get our mind around asking the right question,
mm,
who is the best to do this? Who do I know that can do this better than I can? That's the right question to ask. Rather, how am I going to scale this company?
yeah.
That's the wrong question. It's
All right,
who do
so
I hire to help scale a company?
I got to take people back, Alec, to you might remember this, you might not, but this was Texas. You and I
Hmm.
at the Visionary Summit with Bob,
Hmm.
our
Yeah.
buddy, Coach Bob,
Felt. Yep.
Bob Shenefeld, Coach Bob. I'm sitting there. I'm a little gun shy because I hired the wrong number two a few times. And who knows? Was it my fault? Was it the person outgrew the position? Was it not a right chemistry? I don't know. We won't go into all that. But I will say that I was gun shy. And I remember sitting with you there, and I feel like God made that whole retreat graciously as like a wake up call to Kary because we had this young lady, Sarah, who's amazing. And I think you had met her, and I had kind of like tried her out, with a few hours a month retainer while she had her full-time job. And Alec, we just had probably 3 or 4 chats that weekend where you're just like, "Kary," and you told me some of those things about an A player but
Hmm.
talk to me about because I feel like there's probably some visionary right now in that spot. In fact, I know it.
Hmm.
I met several within the last 48 hours who are literally saying, "I know I need to write number 2." Like, number 1 by Alex's book. I mean, duh, like number 1. Buy your book. But what kind of advice can you give us about
Yeah.
somebody in that crisis right now?
Yeah. Just know that it's number one, you need a number two. It's a game changer, right? And like you're gonna gain more time, earn more income, and create a bigger impact, right? So those things. Know the odds are against you though. So
Ooh.
Gallup says companies fail to choose the right leader 82% of the time. So really, we have about an 18% success rate. About
If
three
we don't use VisionSpark.
if we don't use
Just
VisionSpark,
being
right?
real. Just being
Yeah,
real. Yeah.
yeah. Only about 3% of the population have the innate ability to be the right number two. So oftentimes we choose people on our team that we feel comfortable with. Like we rather would hire the devil we know than the devil we don't know.
Mm.
And generally that is not the way to go. We do that because we trust our team. We trust people on our team. We know their capabilities. But the science and research says that going outside the company um, and really going after that number two that can help scale your company, you're going to have a much better success rate at that.
Wow. That's so good. I'm bad at hiring. Like I can admit that. And I think here's why, Alec. Man, I just believe in people.
Hmm.
Like I had people believe in me, so I'm like, "Oh man, they're going to be, have you ever had this, Alec? Like you meet some visionaries who actually believe more in the person than the actual person believes in themselves.
It is more common than not. So visionaries and entrepreneurs by nature, and we have research to prove this, but by nature we are more sensitive to the average person, and so that sensitivity is our superpower.
What do you mean by
Meaning,
that? What do you
yeah.
mean?
So
With
if
sensitivity,
we
what does that mean?
we can see the needs in the marketplace. We can see the needs of our customer, how to improve the client experience, what services we can provide or products we can provide. So that's our superpower. But when it comes to hiring, we lose that because we're sensitive. We love that person. We believe in them. We want to see them succeed. We we find ourselves hiring poorly because of that. We're not using tools. We're not using effective interviewing or the right assessments to actually see if they have the indispensable traits of a number two leader, right?
Wow.
So, and sometimes we hire someone just like ourselves. We hire
Mm,
other visionaries.
mm,
We hire individuals that should be in sales. We hire individuals that have been in their management their whole life, but they've
mm.
really been in the wrong position.
Okay.
So the odds are against us. And so you really want to make sure you hire the individuals that have what we call the indispensable traits of a number two.
I love your website. It's really good. But right on the homepage, number 2 leader search, and then underneath there you have integrator, second in command. Are these the same thing, or do you
Mhm.
just like try to appeal to people who are in EOS and know the language? Or talk to me. What is that?
Yeah. So there are 30 some titles of
Oh
that
wow.
number two leader, right? So
Wow.
the most common title right now is integrator for the many companies that are running on EOS. Second in command is another title
Okay.
for companies that run on Pinnacle. Cameron Harold wrote a great book called The Second in Command.
Yes.
Um, and so that's another title. But the title is often industry specific or company specific, but general manager, chief of staff, COO, VP of operations,
Even
or
president sometimes?
president. Yes, absolutely. President is one. When I was at Inc. 5000, the owners in the Inc. 5000 called their number two their CEO, and so
Mm,
that's another title. So it really depends, but the role of the number two leader is to run the company. All major divisions, sales, marketing, finance, operations, report to this individual.
mm.
So that's really the definition.
So, folks, we got a few more minutes left, but I would love for you to tag somebody that you know who is a number 2. They're wired that way. In fact, we're going to talk about some characteristics. Don't let me forget about that, what makes a good number 2. But I was just with Kelly Knight, the integrator of EOS. Let's tag her and Mark O'Donnell and EOS Worldwide, even because we're talking a lot about all these amazing people. But she told me an interesting statistic. She said that there's 4 visionaries for every integrator, and that was like, wow. I thought it was actually the opposite. I thought like, oh, visionaries are the unicorn, but you're telling me that the right number 2's the unicorn. Is this do you agree with that?
Yeah, they're truly a unicorn because they have to have the right traits to be a number two. It's
So
not.
yeah. So I would say like humility has to be
Mhm,
something,
mhm,
because otherwise you're going to have this visionary, you know, truth be told, I had a number 2 who I think was probably more visionary, and so we kind of like butted heads at times
mhm.
because I'm trying to have the vision and the other person's trying to have the vision, and you've seen that. In fact, we won't say any names, but we've seen that happen to people
Mhm.
where 2 visionaries are in a company, and it kind of like never go well.
Yeah, or they don't have complementary traits, right? So, in our analysis, we'll measure someone's assertiveness level, right? So this is their ability to want to be in
Interesting. It's one
charge,
of your
right?
tools. It's
So
one of
if
your
you
tools.
have if you have two people who are highly assertive, they're going to butt heads. So you want to make sure there's complementary traits, right? So when we've looked at all of our successful hires, even the few that were unsuccessful, or when I've studied clients who have hired the wrong number two, we have found that there's some commonalities. And so, number one, they're not strategic thinkers, right? So you want to hire a number two who has a higher mental acuity. You want them to be organized and not talking about their files are neat and their desk is neat, but their ability to prioritize and anticipate and plan. And another one we talk about in the book is their orientation towards process. Can they create processes, develop processes, implement processes? They got to love being a coach. They got to love to, they got to love wanting to hold people accountable.
So it's not that they're a great manager, but
Mhm.
you're saying they like to weigh in, roll up their sleeves, and hold people accountable.
Yeah. They manage well, they hold people accountable, they coach, they develop, they're good communicators, good listeners, they're people oriented.
That's so good. Wow. So the book, let's talk about the book. Why the book? Meaning, were you worried that people are just going to read the book and not hire VisionSpark, or talk to us? You have to be an abundant person and write a book that shares your expertise. But yeah, tell us a little bit about why.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the book because there's an absolute need in the marketplace to hire number two. So number one is to encourage entrepreneurs to think that way. So as they're building their business, to think about one of your first hires should be your executive assistant, and the second one probably should be your number two. But also those companies that are succeeding, and there are those rugged individualists that don't have time for their family. They don't have time to pursue other passions. It's all business. They are struggling because their business is not scaling. It's not reaching that level. They're hitting a ceiling, right? They're hitting that ceiling of complexity, as our coach says. And so I wrote the book as an encouragement and to give them a roadmap in how to hire that number two.
Wow. I love the subtitle too. Well, I love the title. We worked on that because we really wanted, Alec, people to get it, and it's not even hiring the right number two. Like, every word matters. So why did you put your? Because that's a big difference of a book. I mean, hiring the right number two leader versus hiring your.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So every entrepreneur is different. We all have, different DNA, different values, different culture, different, we're all different, and our businesses are different. Right. And so not all number twos are the same. Your number two, Kary, is not going to succeed at another client's number two. Right. As well, because there's that match, there's that chemistry. My number two leader, John Vidosh, is phenomenal, and he's exactly who I need. We have complementary skills, where he's strong, I'm not, and vice versa. And so he's the right number two for my business. And so it's a little bit like matchmaking, right? It's there's dating and courting and marrying, right? If we use those terms, and there's a whole process, and you don't want to hire number two just because they have a great resume and they've done it before, and maybe they've done it in your industry. But if there's not that match, there's not that fit with you and your team, it's not going to be successful.
Wow. I mean, I remember you and I talking in Texas about all kinds of stuff. I mean, even, compensation, or how, what do they call it in EOS? A same page meeting. I heard in the last 48 hours, just because I came from Toronto, and I heard all kinds of people talking about this topic, but one of the topics I heard is that somebody said that their number two did not like meeting with them. Let's put it this way, not their current one, their past one. And this person was like, that was a bad sign. But I've heard that. Kelly Knight was telling me that's a theme of the wrong number two, because I think why they don't want to meet with the visionaries, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so many more to-dos. And Kelly said, I like to sit with Mark O'Donnell and hear his vision. And it excites her because it kind of lets her know where things are headed. Now, the right number two can say no or wait. How important is that card? And
Yeah. Well, number one, they have to love meeting with you. So I recommend, after the first, first couple weeks, you should be meeting with this number two every day, right? And then maybe the phases. But even 3 years later, I still meet weekly with my number two, John, and it's a collaboration. He's also bouncing things off me. He's like, hey, Alec, I just want to. Here's how I'm thinking. So he sees me not just as his boss, but as a peer and a collaborator.
so
And then I'm free to be myself. Like, John, I just need to vet. And he just listens, right? But it's, the more time you spend with your number two, the greater return you're going to get out of that relationship.
so good. Man, this half hour went by quick. So here's what I'm going to ask everybody to do. Get a copy of this book. It will actually cost you not to get this book, seriously, because you'll be headed down a path thinking you don't need a number two, or you can figure out yourself. And then, Alec, I'm sure there's a large population here that says, you know what, I actually just want to start the process. How do they start the process to get on your radar? I'm looking at your website. Do they literally just talk this
Yeah.
book? Yeah.
If they click on that link, or there'll be a prompt on there, it'll email discover@visionspark.com, and
Yeah.
we start with a strategy session. So they'll meet with a client strategist, and that's the first step.
We're so proud of you, my friend. The whole EOS community, coach community, all kinds of communities. I know Greg Cleary and others, and man, it's just so cool to see you 12 years later living your dream. And thanks for letting us be your publisher, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kary. Really appreciate everything you've done, and I'm super proud of this book and how it came out. And it'll hit some hearts out there.
Audiobooks coming soon, folks. Get it on Kindle, hardcover, softcover now, and audiobook in the next few months. All right. Thanks, Alec. We'll see you.